Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Troy Farkas, and on today's episode, my conversation with Pete Endres, the owner of Bird Dog Cider and a proud apple farmer. This conversation is a meaningful one for me. I'm from upstate New York, the home of the best apples in the country. Fact, not an opinion. My earliest memories are of preschool field trips to apple orchards, picking apples, laughing with friends, drinking warm apple cider, and the sweet, sweet scents of cider donuts. Fall is my favorite season, and as we close the door on what was truly the best summer of my life, I can't help but look forward to what's to come in the fall. One place you will certainly find me at is Bird Dog Cider in Greenland. Pete Endres, a fellow New Yorker, shares similar childhood memories to me. He grew up working on his family farm in Western New York with dreams of having his own farm one day. That dream farm, acquired on the Seacoast in 2019, now houses Bird Dog Cider in Greenland. When you walk into their doors, you're seemingly transported back to colonial times. There's no screens inside, just a family atmosphere, new friends meeting each other, and delicious cider getting served. Pete, alongside family and friends, renovated the rundown farm during the pandemic, eventually opening Bird Dog's doors to the public 1 year ago. On today's episode, Pete and I discuss how the Seacoast has received Bird Dog in its last year, the storied history of hard cider in New England, what sets the cider-making process apart from how wine and beer are made, and the tragic circumstances which finally forced Pete to stop dreaming about owning a farm and instead to start making it happen. Seacoast Stories is presented by Chinburg Properties and Soul Models, and we begin today's episode, selfishly, by talking about why New York is better than New Hampshire. This is an absolute honor for me, and the reason for that is because you're a New Yorker.
Yes.
And by New Yorker, you're a real New Yorker. You're not one of these city folk who think they're better than us. I'm also a real New Yorker. Mm-hmm. And so I want to take this opportunity to talk about where we come from, because I haven't had the opportunity to do that with anyone on the show yet. So can you tell me about your New York childhood, where you grew up, specifically how you spent your days?
Sure. I always struggle a little bit when people ask me where I'm from and I say New York State. New York State is so big, right? And if you don't say something like Western New York or Central New York, people will...
Upstate New York.
Or upstate, yeah, but upstate is so big in and of itself.
And upstate is controversial. What actually is upstate?
That's 100% right. Some people think once you leave the city, you're upstate.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So I vary between Central and Western New York. I grew up in a little town called Sodus, which is smack dab between Rochester and Syracuse, about a 7-hour drive from the Seacoast. I grew up in a very rural area, a small farming town, and the farms that are around me are pretty much all apples. I grew up in apple country of upstate New York. And my dad still runs the farm that I grew up on, my brothers and I. And that's about a 130-acre apple farm that's surrounded by a whole bunch of other apple farms around us.
Now, you are more well-versed in apples than I am, obviously. And so I've been biased my whole life. I've lived in Connecticut, New Hampshire. I have always been waving the flag of New York State and said, apples and cider, apple cider are what we do best. Like New Hampshire, your apples are cute. You're not New York apples. You're an actual expert in this, have grown up around this stuff. Is New York apples, are they the best?
Yeah, okay. I have to say they are. Good. Yeah, they are. You know, all of New England can do apples. You can grow apples in a lot of places. But where I grew up is really the heart of apple country. My dad loves to say all that like rich Canadian soil got pushed across the lake and is now in the United States side of things in New York. We have a bunch of glacial tills. It's well drained. It just grows apples really well. We're near Lake Ontario. The climate's moderated by the lake and so forth. It's just got all these ripe conditions for growing apples.
Yeah, I have such nostalgia for my childhood and apple picking and going to our local farms in Saratoga, Albany area. and getting apple cider donuts. It was the thing to do in the fall for us. And it means so much to me still.
Absolutely. And, around here, like where I grew up was very much different. Like what I learned growing up, and my dad's farm is very much wholesale focused. So he's growing fruit that is picked and it goes to a cold storage facility, and then it goes ultimately to grocery stores for you to buy and eat.
So what was your role on these farms growing up?
My role, I did everything. I mean, my first job as a teenager was a farm. And actually, oddly enough, it wasn't on my own farm. It was a neighboring farm.
Wow.
And I was helping to pick strawberries, but it didn't take long. It took a couple years of doing that to come back to my own farm and helping my dad. There's so many tasks that you do on a farm. You tie trees, you prune trees, you mow, you run equipment around. And I learned all of this stuff, growing up as a teenager. And it's something that ultimately led me to, want to pursue having my own farm. So here we are.
All right. So you did not immediately pursue your own farm. You actually went on to attend Williams College in Massachusetts. You studied environmentalism and renewable energy in particular there, which is a sector you've spent the last 20 years in. This is something I know very little about. Can you explain to me why this industry, why this work that you do is important?
We are undergoing a very significant transformation in our electric supply in this country. We have moved very significantly over the past 2 to 3 decades away from fossil generation, largely coal, to renewables. It's important because we need to transform. We can't rely on the old ways of generating, electricity that we always have in this country. For about 100 years, we've been generating with coal or oil or some other fossil fuel, and we need to move away from that. It takes time, takes decades, but that's the work that we're doing that I've been a part of.
Need to move away from it because that stuff leads to climate change.
Climate change, absolutely. Climate change is real. And we are seeing, I've seen just here on my farm, over a shorter period of time. Now, granted, climate change is a long-term thing, right? I don't want to mislead anyone to think otherwise, but you can see volatility in short term now. There are higher highs and lower lows. There are wetter wets and drier dries, all those things and it makes, managing that on my farm and other farms more difficult. And so, we've got to transform. We've got to find new and better ways of doing things.
Okay, so you go down this track. Your work takes you to live in Cleveland a couple years, and then you end up back in Boston, right? Which is where you met your wife, Claudia. We love a good love story on this show. How did you two meet?
Oh, the love story. I am one of those people who met online.
Wow.
Yeah, folks, I don't know
before it was right. The default.
I don't know if anyone remembers Match.com anymore.
I've heard stories.
Yeah, it's all other stuff that I don't even know anymore. But yeah, my wife and I, we had both recently come out of our, relationships, and we were looking around. And we did match profiles, and she winked at me. That's like a little thing that you can do. I always tease her because I was like, it's a cop-out. You didn't write me anything. You just winked.
Well, the women never have to try. I know. The men always have to do the work.
Yeah, it's true. So she winked at me. I responded. And it turns out one of the crazy connections that my Claudia and I have is that we have both been chased by a sea lion. And we bonded over that. We got together. We had a great first date. She was my second date on Match. I think I was maybe her third. And we've been together ever since. That was in 2011.
Okay, you can't just drop chased by a sea lion. Yeah. What does that even mean?
Well, in my case, I was in New Zealand. I did a study abroad there. And I was out on this peninsula. I was walking along the beach, minding my own business, having a wonderful, peaceful walk. And I look out of the corner of my eye, and out comes this huge creature just flying towards me. And of course, when sea lions are in the water, they move fast, right? But once it hit, and I freaked out, but once it hit the sand, it moves a little slower, but still kept coming at me, like, like sort of hobbling like they do or whatever. And it chased me up into these sand dunes. I finally got away from it by just like climbing up on a sand dune, and it decided not to chase me. So that was my story. And in Claudia's story, she was sea kayaking, and a sea lion was sort of like flipping around the tail of her boat and chasing her. And it, freaked her out. It's rightfully when you're in the water.
Was she also in New Zealand? Was this?
She was in Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea what a sea lion looks like, nor that I didn't know it could go on land.
Like a seal, a bigger seal, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sure your first date was wild, exchanging your sea lion stories.
Well, one of the things I told her on our first date, which I tell a lot of people, is that, Claudia, one day I want to own a farm. And that was my warning to her. That was in 2011. So by the time I was about 30 at that time, 30 years old. And by that point, I had decided that I want to own a farm, my own farm someday.
And her response was what?
She's like, she's probably like, who is this guy? Like, yeah, whatever, and then she spilled a drink on me. So probably the topics changed at some point. We weren't dwelling on that at that point in our lives.
So when did this idea for owning your own farm first get hatched?
It hatched, probably in 2011. Okay. I would say it gelled. There was a sad thing in my life that was going on at that time. It was in 2011, my mother was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And that was a huge blow to our family. She ended up living with the disease for about 16 months, and she passed away in 2012. That was, like I said, a huge blow to our family. We had always been very close. And honestly, I had lived to that point in time a relatively trauma-free life. I was very lucky. I had an awesome childhood. I had wonderful opportunities all through school, sports, good college, everything. And then it just sort of felt like the world collapsed when my mom died. And one of the things that happened that was positive at that time was our family, my two older brothers and my dad, all came together. We were very tight, probably tighter than we've ever been at that time. And my oldest brother and I really started talking, actually my middle brother too, we all started talking about cider at that point. We took this interest in cider. And ultimately that led my oldest brother and I to really become very motivated to explore a cider business together. And I always had the idea that I wanted the cider business to be rooted in a place, meaning a farm. I didn't want to just like set up a tap room somewhere in a city and have it be that sort of establishment. I really wanted to provide like a full experience to people so they could see, all right, this is where the apples come from. Then they get pressed and then they get, made into cider all in one location. So you could have that experience and really understand it. And that's sort of like what launched ultimately my wife and I to look for properties. We moved from Boston to Portsmouth in 2015. And that's when we started looking for farms.
Why'd you move to Portsmouth?
So we wanted to leave Boston. That was ultimately not where we wanted to be long term. And we were looking at Portland, basically all the like small cities, big towns, Portland, Maine, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Burlington, Vermont. My wife is a physician, so she was interviewing around. She also happens to be from Hampton. And she ended up getting a great job offer here. Plus her family was concentrated here. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know much or anything about Portsmouth or the Seacoast when we moved here. But there were great vibes, good people that I quickly met. And I'm so happy that we landed here. It is a really wonderful place.
Okay. Now let's talk about your fascination with cider. Why did you and your brother get so hung up on cider? Not only, you said that you didn't just want to have a tap room, you wanted to have a farm, you wanted the whole process, soup to nuts here. Yeah. But why cider specifically? There's a bunch of things you could do on a farm. Well,
I think I love cider because I love apples. And it's funny, I don't love apples in the sense that I have to eat them all the time. In fact, I don't really. I mean, I enjoy a good apple right off the tree, but out of season, I'm not someone who's really eating apples. I'm drinking them a fair amount, but not eating them. But I more so than the taste, I suppose, of apples. I love their history. They're just a great fruit. And I say that it sounds just so stupid to say that, but like there is amazing history tied up in apples, in particular, like New England sort of colonial history, which is very much rooted in what we're doing here in the cider business. I mean, there's wonderful stories, Johnny Appleseed, who is a real person, right? He spread varieties across New York and Ohio and parts of the Midwest. And I just think that there's so much cool history tied up in apples.
Let's talk about some of the history.
Right.
What is the historical significance of the apple to New England?
So another thing about apples is that they're not native to North America, which most people would never think about, right? Like apples are just core to New England and the Northeast.
And New York State.
But they didn't originate here. They originated from basically like present day Kazakhstan.
What?
Yep. And
everything comes from the Middle East.
They got brought here by Europeans. There are some species of crab apples that are native to North America, but most of the varieties that we think of as good, eating apples and so forth, basically their ancestors were brought here. And, they're continuing sort of basically all the homesteads in early colonial America. Many of them had apple trees in their backyards. And a lot of those trees were not used for eating. They were actually used for making cider. And so to that end, like cider is a very traditional New England beverage, which is another sort of historical fact that a lot of people don't think about. It was much more popular than, it predates beer for the most part, in this area.
Right.
It was a more popular beverage than beer. And it was in some places maybe even safer to drink than water because fermentation is a preservative.
Right.
And so you take a fruit and the sugars ferment, and in this case, apples ferment into hard cider, and you have a, probably relatively low alcohol, safe beverage to drink.
Yeah.
In those early days.
Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but to further tie the history of cider to this area, the patriots and the colonists who were planning to overthrow the tyrannical British government, they're sitting around in the local pubs, they're drinking cider.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely, they are.
So like the birthplace of America, it's rooted in cider.
There was yes, that is true. And there was a time that basically you could go to any sort of tavern in New England or in the colonies, and they would be serving cider. And we actually have a cider named Revival in honor of that.
Yeah. I love that. And so to that end, when we had spoken prior to this, I told you that I didn't know that hard cider was a thing until I studied abroad in Scotland and I saw hard cider on tap. And I was like, apple cider can be alcoholic?
Yeah.
What? That's a thing? But to our point, that was the thing in early days America. But at some point, America lost its way with cider, and cider fell out of popularity. So how did that happen?
It's not like I'm an absolute expert on this, but I think there are different factors at play, including the growing popularity of beer, which was sort of late 1800s, early 1900s. And then, of course, sort of the nail in the coffin for cider for about 60 or 70 years was prohibition. And at that time, everything, in the sort of context of bootlegging and hiding everything, spirits became much more popular, right? More bang for your buck, smaller volume, etc. And cider just sort of fell by the wayside. It became a lost tradition. And largely that's true until probably the late, maybe 1980s, 1990s. And since that time, cider has been on a very slow resurgence. And I think it's still growing. It's not like some huge movement that we're part of, but it's still growing. There is definitely a growing appreciation for cider and traditional ciders and dry ciders now, but it's been about 100 years gone.
Any idea as to why it made a comeback in the late 20th century?
I don't know. There was, I think, to some extent, there were people who were, I would say, pioneers kind of in the cider world in the United States who had this appreciation for like the more traditional ciders that were being made in Europe, like places like England and Brittany and Normandy and the Basque region in Spain. And they brought some of those methods to the United States. And this is all very small and fringe and niche things, but that spawned other areas. For example, like the Finger Lakes. The Finger Lakes has a very rich, as you know, you're a New Yorker. The Finger Lakes has a rich wine growing tradition. Well, they also grow apples really well down there. And so there's tons of crossover between all this winemaking knowledge and apple growing that is directly applicable, because the way you make cider is basically the same way you make wine.
Okay, let's talk about that. What are the similarities?
The similarities are you take a fruit, you press it, you mash it up, you squeeze the juice out of it, and you let it ferment.
Okay.
That is in its very simple form. That's how you make cider or wine. There's interventions that you can take along the way and many decisions that you can make in terms of how you might want to alter the flavor or let it age, mature, etc. But that at its core is what you were doing.
Yep. Core. That's what you did there. Now, cider and wine can sit for a while. I think you told me the cider that you have on currently at the tap room, you brewed?
Made. Fermented. Yep. You don't brew cider.
Like a year or two ago?
Or more. We're serving stuff here currently that's either from 22 or 23.
That's wild.
Yep.
The beer at the breweries, I mean, that stuff is weeks old.
Right.
And, a year goes by and like that's not good anymore.
Yep. Different styles there. But honestly, most cideries you would go to would have much newer stuff too. So our style, Bird Dog style of making cider is very traditional. And that's not to say it's better or worse. Of course, we love our product and we'll promote it. But we let Mother Nature do her thing. We let time play out, and we let flavors evolve during aging. And so I never like to rush anything, and I do not release a cider unless I'm happy with it, for the sake of just getting it out on the market.
Right.
We don't do that. So yes, our process on average between fermentation and ready to drink is about 18 months or longer.
Okay. And I want to ask you about some of those ciders in a moment, but let's get back to the path to Bird Dog. So you moved to Portsmouth in 2015. You're working in the energy field. You're traveling around the country a lot, but you are still based here. When are the first real steps taken toward what we are now in today?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I always was dedicated to having the cider business be rooted in a farm. It took my wife and I about 5 years to find a property.
Just any property?
Well,
the perfect property?
We were looking for, farm properties of 50 acres or more are few and far between in the Seacoast. And when you find them, they may be gobbled up by a developer. It's top dollar. And we scoured the Seacoast. We looked at listings all the time. I was religiously scrolling on Zillow and read, everything that people do to look at real estate. And on top of that, I used some of my sort of developer techniques, and I sent letters out to properties that I thought would be great locations for the farm. And I probably did that with a dozen or more people.
So what exactly were you looking for? What was the checklist that your ideal farm had? I wanted
50 acres or more. It had to be suitable for growing apples. So like drainage had to be decent, soil, etc. Had to be cleared. I didn't want to clear a bunch of land that was forested. I ideally, from a location standpoint, I wanted to be in a convenient spot. I didn't want to be too far away for people to drive, because I wanted to have basically a retail farm. So my customers have to come to me, and I wanted to make that convenient for them, or as convenient as possible. Turns out Greenland is only 5 miles from Portsmouth.
Yes, it is.
And we were incredibly lucky. It took us time, but we were patient, and it paid off. In 2019, we found this property. It was listed, and we couldn't afford it, especially with the work that the improvements that needed to go into it. And we were incredibly lucky to work with the previous owners. We had the opportunity to sit down with them, tell them our vision, what we wanted to do. We were very much talking about the goals of this place in the context of community, bringing people here, sharing experiences and all that thing. And they really liked it. And because of that, they negotiated with us to a price that worked. And the rest is history.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So you closed in 2019? Just before the world shut down.
Just before the world shut down. And holy cow, our timing was impeccable. We just got so lucky.
No one ever says that with regards to COVID, so I can't wait to find out.
I will admit it. We embarked on a massive full restoration of a 1700s farmhouse beginning in early 2020, right when the pandemic hit. We were not living here at the time, and our contractors were also lucky in the sense that they were able to continue their work. There's no one around this place. We're buffered from neighbors by a healthy distance. No one was paying attention here. They could show up, they could do their work, they could continue the renovations. This was also before prices skyrocketed later in COVID. And so we were able to do a lot of the renovation at a lower cost than if we had done it a year or year and a half later. It would have been way more expensive. So we lucked out. And by the end of 21, the house had been completely renovated and we were living here. We moved in 2020.
Now, to your point about, you mentioned this is really a family business here.
Yep.
You live on the farm where your business is. During COVID, when we were all seeking connection because we were all so isolated, you and your family were hunkering down together working on this place.
Yeah.
So you guys were probably having the time of your lives.
It was brilliant. We had some time to slow down, spend together. We had both my kids were very small at that point in time. And we just had the fortune of so much space out here. We would come and we'd sit on our hilltop and have a bonfire with friends, at a safe distance that people felt comfortable with. We were just really lucky. So we spent a lot of really fun time here. In those years, that was like 2020, 21, before things really started to kind of open up again. And we just made the most out of that time. It was really actually wonderful looking back on it. I hate to say that because it was such a hard time for so many people. And there's just so much loss during that time. We were fortunate that we did not experience that. So when you got started to working on this place, what was the vision that you had? What did you want to turn this place into? Yeah, I had the vision of a place where people could come and sit and have a cider, share stories with their friends, meet some neighbors, have it be very relaxed, just simple. I love simple things. And that's really what we try to do here. And, Greenland doesn't have a lot going on out here. We don't have gathering spots. There's really not many places in the community that you can go. And there's really nowhere almost that you can go and have a beverage, an alcoholic beverage. So I've learned since opening that actually was more important to people than I anticipated. And I love that about this business. We have a very nice group of locals, regulars who come in here. A lot of them are from Greenland, some others from Stratham and neighboring towns. And they come here just, to sit and chill and talk with some people. We don't have any screens on the walls, and that's very intentional.
Love that.
And we get asked for it all the time, especially on Sundays when football rolls around.
And I'm sure it's tempting.
It's tempting.
We got some people here.
But I just don't, I like it when people can sit down and engage. We just don't have that many places where we can do that anymore. And we're really trying to promote that. So that was the vision. Granted, it came together over time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all sort of seen up front. And it's been a lot of people, I should say, Troy, I am in a huge debt of gratitude to, family and friends who have contributed to this place.
Your neighbor from Portsmouth, Andrew.
Yes.
Who's always here. is always helping out.
He is our tasting room manager, and he was a dear friend. We met as neighbors in Portsmouth, and he just basically started like picking up this project when it took. For 4 years, Andrew worked here for free, building things and doing things, all the things that need to be done here before we opened.
Wow.
And there are others. There's many other people. I'm not too many to name, but I want to thank everyone. It's like really just incredibly touching how much support there's been for this place.
Why do you think all these people were so supportive and bought into your vision?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and I don't know the answer to it. I will make up an answer, and that is, I think it comes back to simplicity. We all have so much going on in our lives right now. We look at our screens all the time. We get text messages all the time. This is a place where you can come and just sort of sit back and relax. And from a creator's standpoint, like the people who were actually doing physical things here, building things, had a lot of latitude. They could come here. They could like work with their hands. They could be creative in a way that they might not otherwise have that outlet. And I think that there's a yearning for that among people right now. And so I think this place provides that to some extent, a little bit here and there.
And for all the people who helped, I mean, you said that Andrew did 4 years of work for free. Was all of this just, hey, Pete, we believe in you. You don't owe us anything? Or
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It means a lot. I don't like to. This place is not about me. I firmly believe that. People give me credit and so forth, and I love that. I appreciate it. But this, more than me, this is a place. It's about the place. I view myself as a steward of this place, and there are other stewards who believe as much in this place as I do. And that means a lot to me.
Coming up, why Pete hopes the bird dog business never outgrows the Seacoast, and the murder that took place on his farm. That's next, but I want to tell you where I will be next Wednesday. Soul Models is one of my favorite Seacoast nonprofits. Their executive director, Carrie Penna, was actually on the show 1 year ago, and it remains one of my favorite podcasts to date. Soul Models serves middle school girls along the Seacoast. Through the programs offered at Soul Models, these girls participate in yoga, journaling, making flower crowns, and so many more activities that help middle school girls navigate the horrifying experience of going to middle school today. And their annual flagship event, Soul Powerful, is happening next Wednesday, September 24th at the Rivermill Landing in Dover. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., and a bunch of fun things are planned for the evening. There will be live auctions, silent auctions, speakers, and prizes. Lots of prizes, including, but not limited to, a scooter, a 2-night stay at Star Island, which I just got back from. It is lovely. There's an espresso martini party, and even Patriots tickets. I mean, come on. You won't want to miss this event. It is one that is deeply meaningful to me, and Seacoast Stories is proud to be a sponsor of Soul Powerful. To join me for this very special evening, just visit the ticket link in the show notes. I cannot wait to see you there. All right, I'm going to just come out and say it. I love Chinburg properties, and not in the way that you love the French fries at Gillies at 1 a.m. I mean real love, because Chinburg, they just don't build homes, they build community. You know those gorgeous old mill buildings in Portsmouth, Dover, Exeter, Newmarket that you've seen? The ones that used to smell like broken machinery? Well, Chinburg swooped in and turned them into apartments, lofts, and workspaces that people actually want to set foot in. They took the kind of buildings you'd expect to see in a creepy ghost tour and somehow made them cozy, modern, and filled with life. I live in one of them, so I know firsthand. Chinburg is local, family-run. They've been revitalizing the Seacoast for decades, and they are a big part of what makes the Seacoast so special. So if you are looking for a picturesque apartment on the Seacoast, I strongly recommend you visit their website and check out their availabilities in Portsmouth, Dover, Newmarket, Biddeford, and more. Thank you, Chinburg, and thank you, Soul Models, for supporting this episode. Now back to today's story with P. Endres, who tells us about the fascinating process of making hard cider.
So I started experimenting with cider in like 2015, I guess, and I made it in really small batches, and we still do. But I scaled up to our first tank size in 2020. My thought was if I could make a decent cider at a 5-gallon scale, then I can just scale up to 250 gallons. And then same thing. I was like, okay, I'm going to try my first tank. And if I can make a decent cider in a tank at that scale, then I can just do it more and more. And that's pretty much what we've done. We're still very small. We make about 2,000 gallons a year, but it's enough for our business. I don't have any intent to have some like huge, business that's got distribution and all that stuff. In fact, what I really want, this tasting room is the engine of the business. I want to sell as much of it here as I possibly can because there's so much rooted in this place. There's experience. There's things that go along. There's storytelling. There's things that go along with your sips that you can't get elsewhere. And so that's really kind of the longer term vision. We're still small scale. We'll ramp up production a little bit more for sure. That's my plan. But I don't ever want to be like some bigger business. We want to be a small business that people appreciate and still have that nice touch and community feel, all those things.
Really? You honestly mean that? No dreams of having Bird Dog be in grocery store shelves?
Nope. Well, don't get me wrong. We do work with some local shops, and that's very important. There's some wonderful partners out there who carry our product, who really believe in it. And it's good marketing value for us too. So we do that. But what I'm talking about is sort of like the growth model in alcohol businesses or beverage businesses is really typically a growth one. They scale up and then they ramp up their distribution. And then they've got to keep up with that distribution. And then they're selling product to Texas and California and Chicago and all these other places. To answer your question, I have no interest in doing that. I want to be as local as possible. We can build a beautiful business here that will sustain, the families who are involved in our livelihoods at a very moderate scale, like maybe 3 or 4 or 5,000 gallons a year. And that's it. That's tiny. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I talked to your quasi neighbors recently on the podcast, Limitless Fitness, a gym in Greenland. Yeah. It's one-on-one personal training. That's it. And Bill, the owner there, told me, in the fitness industry, people can really try to, all right, we're getting into sauna and cold plunge now. And like, we're spreading ourselves thin, trying to do all the things.
Right.
Whereas at Limitless, we focus on doing this one thing very, very well. And that will work for us.
I think
it seems you're doing the same thing.
It's so important for businesses to know where they want to go, right? Growth is not always good. A lot of businesses maybe don't get that up front. I think you sort of have to know your place in terms of size and like what's optimal, what fits your livelihood, your lifestyle, all those things. If we sold into like southern Maine and northern Massachusetts, maybe down to Boston, that would be a perfectly fine reach for us. Totally fine. We don't need to be any bigger than that.
So take me into the actual opening of Bird Dog. Before you actually opened the tap room, you were distributing your cider elsewhere, right?
Yep. Yes, we were selling to some local stores and restaurants before we opened. Right. You could also buy it online, which basically no one did, and come here and pick it up. At that time, you could walk literally through this raggedy old front door of our barn, like lift up this loud, sort of metal floppy thing and walk in and get some cider and walk out. That's how we started, but that was really just a Band-Aid. We had to be a little bit more professional than that. So it took us really 3 years, basically 4 years of barn renovations to get where we are now. But most of that occurred in about a 3-year period. And it was everything. The whole guts of this place had to be fixed up. Everything from the drainage and the septic to the floors, the walls, some structural stuff, lighting, everything had to be done. And most of it we did ourselves.
Why Bird Dog?
I will say naming a business with a family member is so difficult. It took us, my brother Nate and I, took us probably 12 months.
Wow.
Literally to come up with a name.
What are some of the other options?
Oh my God. I can't. All right. Here's one. This is a good one. When we renovated the house, one of the things we discovered, and actually were told by the previous owner, is there was a pretty significant honeybee colony in there. And so we ended up having that extracted with a local guy, Joe Martilla from CB Honey. He's great. He came over like 3 separate times to extract these bees. So one of the names we thought of, which we thought was cool, was Honey House. Honey House Cider, until we looked it up. And it's basically like a term for a brothel.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would have been good.
So we're
you got people here.
I don't know. It's sort of like a little risque, like people might appreciate that. But ultimately, we didn't go for Honey House. We went for Bird Dog. Most people think of Bird Dog as a noun and, like a hunting dog. But Bird Dog is also a verb. And it means to pursue with dogged determination. And so that's what Bird Dog is. It's a verb. And we are bird dogging it. That's what we do. This was, I mentioned, about a 10-year, actually more than that, life pursuit between my brother and I. And, its genesis, unfortunately, was in my mother's death. We just decided that we needed to do something that we cared about. And, in part to help honor her legacy and just build something. So that's Bird Dog.
When you did actually open your doors to the public in the fall of 2024, knowing that it was a 10-year journey to get to that point, with the backdrop of your mother's death being the Kickstarter for this, what was it like to sit back and watch your first customers come through the door?
It was unbelievable. That day, we opened September 29th of last year. And that day, I didn't have a whole lot of time to reflect because we got slammed. That day, people came out in droves and supported this place like I've never seen before. That remains our highest selling day, highest revenue day by actually a significant margin. And we did it with 1 point of sale. We did it with nowhere near enough glasses, nowhere near enough flight boards, nowhere near enough many things. And yet people loved it. I kept apologizing. There was a line out the door for 3 hours straight. And I kept apologizing to people. I'm sorry to make you wait. We'll get there. And yeah, probably some people were frustrated, but no one cared. Everyone was having a great time. And that's the kind of people that we have here. Those are the customers. And we will try very hard to keep them and keep making them happy as we grow here. But it was pretty incredible. The reflection I had was actually the night before. We had a nice dinner with some close friends and family to celebrate the opening. We had a family style dinner inside the tasting room. And my dad was there. My family members were there. Everyone got to see it and participate in it. It was a delicious meal. It was everything that like sort of cider should have to go along with it. Great food, good people, sharing, all of those things. And that was really meaningful. That was a reflection that, listen, all this hard work and patience and dedication can pay off.
Mm. What do you attribute the massive lines out the door on that first day to?
It's a good question. Cause my social media presence is not very good. That's hard. I am not good at that. And marketing in general is not my strong suit. I think by that point we had built enough of a following because we had thrown some parties. Part of our effort here to bring people into this project and let them experience the place. We threw parties. We had community, fun things. We have an annual cider party, which is awesome. People get to see how cider is made. They go on wagon rides. They do all this wholesome stuff, sit around, listen to music. And we also do an annual tree, what we call like a planting party, which is kind of the equivalent of like an old fashioned barn raising. But it's a tree raising. Like friends and family come out and they help us plant trees every year. So we have 2,000 trees planted on this property now. It had 0 when we started.
Wow.
And all of those trees were planted with the help of neighbors and friends. And so, I think people, we tried really hard, and I'm also very grateful for it. Labor is not cheap these days. We tried very hard to bring people in to this project along the way and let them experience it. And I think by the time opening day came around, there was enough interest and participation, and that's what drove people out.
You've said the word patience a couple of times. You took your time finding the right farm. You took your time building or rebuilding the farm. You took your time opening the tap room, perfecting the cider. A lot of business owners will do whatever the quick cash grab is. They will do whatever because they're growing impatient just to get something to market. Why is patience such a big part of your approach here?
Because this is my retirement plan. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm lucky enough to have a day job that can support the growth of this in parallel. And so I'm able to be patient. And I'm very aware of that. There's a lot of business owners who start and they're immediately dependent on the new business, right? And that is a really stressful place to be. And I guess I feel a little fortunate that I'm not there. It was very purposeful. That's how I've intended to sort of grow this. But I am playing the long game here. This is what I want to do, for the rest of my life. I love agriculture. I love cider. I love diversification and land use. I should add that this is the first year on the farm that we are diversifying beyond apples and cider. So we now have a U-pick and wholesale dahlia business here that my friend and partner Shannon Shipman.
Shout out.
Yeah.
We love Shannon.
Shannon is running that, and she is so talented. She has a business called Fox Cottage Farm, which has partnered with Bird Dog. And basically, we're providing the land and some other infrastructure, and she's running with all the growing and maintenance of the dahlias, and they are absolutely spectacular. That is the first, outside of apples and cider, that's the first diversification of this farm, but not the last. We want to do some other things in the future. I want to grow some peaches and some other fruits and find ways to provide some experience here for people. That's just more. You know?
In October 4th, you are partnering with my dear friends at Three Bridges Yoga for, what did Stephanie call it? Bend and Bruise.
Bend and Bruise,
Bend and Bruise, she called it. What's that going to be?
That's right. That will be the first ever yoga class here at Bird Dog Cider. Inside the barn, which is a beautiful space. If you haven't seen it, come check it out. And I think I might have to get my own mat out for that one.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Have you done yoga?
I have.
Okay,
it's been a while, but maybe this is the spark that gets me back into it.
Heck yeah. We would love to have more Seacoast men doing yoga. So you said that Bird Dog is your retirement plan. Devil's advocate. Do you think that you not being full-time at Bird Dog is hindering its ability to reach its full potential?
Yes, in some ways. And I guess I would answer that in maybe a more global way, which is that I realize that perfection is a false hope. I'm okay with imperfection. But obviously only to a certain degree. I think I'm very happy with what we're doing here at Bird Dog. I'm really happy and lucky to have the staff that we have that they're just so awesome. They can do everything here. So I can walk away or I can travel, which I do fairly frequently. and know that things are going to be looked after here. But, could Bird Dog be doing more or this and that if it had my full 100% attention? Yeah, probably. But honestly, I think it's growing in a really nice way right now. And I'm okay with, back to the comment about patience, I'm okay with slow evolution. And I don't really love to make decisions super quickly. I will when necessary, but I like to be pretty methodical about things. So sometimes it's okay, let's just move this along. Let's think about it. Let's grow it in a nice, slow way so that we don't change too much too quickly.
Yeah. The Seacoast folks listening are pretty entrepreneurial. There's probably lots of people listening who have a full-time job and have some type of side gig, side hustle.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them to figure out the balance and to keep yourself sane and still be a good father and husband?
My God. It's super challenging. I feel short in many areas all the time, but it doesn't bother me too much. I think at some level, if I know the quality of work is there and I'm ultimately, in the context of Bird Dog, providing an experience for people and a product for people that they really enjoy, I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that. I think as to the advice part of that, I would tell people, follow your gut. Figure out what priorities really matter to you, what they are, in what order, and the rest will kind of fall into place. Trust your gut. Some things take time to, evolve, and other times maybe things need to happen quicker, right? I don't know, last year, it took us 3 or 4 years to renovate this barn, and we were comfortable with that timeline. But last year I set a date of September 29th that we were going to open and everything. And once we set that date, it's okay, everything else has got to fall into line now. Right. And we hit it. Was it absolutely perfect when we opened? No, it was good enough. And then we made improvements from there. So, I don't know, a little bit of tolerance around imperfection, I think, goes a long way. People oftentimes put maybe too much pressure on themselves. And sometimes you just got to make decisions, make action, and move forward and change, adapt as you go.
Let's talk about some of these ciders that you got here. So, which is your favorite?
Oh man, that's like asking my favorite child. And I can't answer that. And it also depends on the day.
Of course it does. And do you only drink cider, alcohol-wise?
I know there are definitely other alcohols I enjoy. I like cocktails. Yeah. I like gin. I like bourbon. I like mezcal.
Because no offense, I love cider. It's not something that I would drink all the time.
Maybe not yet.
No, I love cider, and all your cider here is fantastic, but it tends to be heavier, I feel like, and you just got to be in the mood for it. I feel like
heavier than what?
If I'm having cider, I'm having 2 max.
Okay.
After that, I'm going to be, I'm not going to feel great. Not only will I be a little buzzed, that'll feel good, but physically I won't feel that great. Some wine, couple glasses of wine, I can throw back a lot of those and still feel okay in my body.
I gotcha. Well, everyone's different, right? And everyone's got a different palate. Everyone's got a different tolerance towards alcohol and different types of alcohol. So that much is very true. I totally recognize that cider doesn't suit everyone. Let's face it, we're making dry ciders. Cider in general is kind of a fringe beverage. Dry ciders are a super niche thing. What
does that mean, dry cider?
Dry cider means that when at the end of the fermentation, all of the sugars in the juice basically convert to alcohol and there is no residual sugar left. That means dry. We don't back sweeten at all. We don't add sugar to our ciders. We just let Mother Nature take her course, very much like making wine. What I tell people all the time is just like you can't make the best wines from table grapes, you can't make the best ciders from any old apple. So we select apples that are great for cider and have the properties that we're looking for. what I try to sort of inform people about is like, hey, give it a shot. It might not be your favorite drink, but over time, like you might come around to it. I think you just might have to give it a little bit of time. And if you're tasting cider, what I like to tell people is your first sip, throw it away. Your second sip is your adjustment on your palate. And your third sip is actually your taste. So don't give it away or discard it after your first or second taste. And a lot of people have come around to it. And so we have a whole spectrum of blends here, and not yet any single varietals, but those are coming next year. So yeah, it's fun. I mean, what we love to have people do is come have a flight, taste them, see what resonates with you and what you like, what you don't like.
Okay, so you completely copped out, did not tell me the cider. I had the Revival. That was so good. And then the name's escaping me. One of them is like based on the family or your brother.
We, Sons and Daughters.
Sons and Daughters, yes.
Yeah, Sons and Daughters is really just a tribute to the fact that we have a family business. And who knows, maybe someday our kids would want to take this over. We'll see.
Oh, is that the dream?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. And, they'll go out and chart their own course. I did that. My dad had to, my dad wants us to take over the farm. And I think after he realized, all right, Pete's not moving home to do that. He finally came to terms with it. But maybe I'll do that at some point. But yeah, no, that Sons and Daughters is a classic dry cider, very approachable, should be kind of right up the middle for most people. And then we have some other stuff that's more bitter, more complex, is better with food. A lot of cider is best really consumed with food as a pairing, to break up the palate a little bit and enhance the flavors. So,
and do you guys serve food here?
We have snacks. We have a really awesome soft pretzel. We have a charcuterie box. We have some other chips and pretzels and stuff like that. We do not have a commercial kitchen, so we don't do any hot foods.
Any kind of food trucks planned?
We're working on that. Some of our events this fall, we might get a food truck for.
Okay.
And we also encourage people to bring a picnic. You can bring outside food here. Great. Come hang out for the day and enjoy the lawn, the picnic tables, outside space.
A couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of with regards to Bird Dog Cider?
I am the type of person that always is sort of like in motion. It's hard for me to think of a job as complete, because I'm always thinking about sort of the next thing. It's like, okay, well, what do we have to do next? Or what do I want to do next? But looking back, it is important to stop and reflect on where you have gotten. And I am so proud that we spent 4 hard years of work and dedication on physical remodeling, as well as building our product and bringing it all together in a way that people enjoy. That is incredibly satisfying. When people walk in the door and they're happy to be here, or they pick up a glass of cider and they're like, that is delicious. That makes me so proud.
If your mother walked into these doors today, what do you think her reaction would be?
Wow. She would be very proud. She would probably mostly appreciate the camaraderie, the community, the togetherness that it took to build this place. She would be very proud of that. And she would sit down probably at the end of the bar, and she would listen to anyone who cared to talk with her. She was a wonderful listener. And she'd tell her own stories. She would cherish this place. She would have a great time here. And she would also really love seeing her grandkids, her 2 granddaughters, growing up on a farm and pursuing this type of upbringing, which we're so lucky to have. My mom was a pediatrician. She was an expert in childhood development, and seeing kids happy and sort of developing in their own right and is that meant the world to her. And so seeing her grandkids be able to do that here would be incredibly meaningful to her.
So much of your life story is rooted in Apple's family. In 2025, with this business humming along now, what emotions come to mind knowing that you had this in your head and have put it out into existence?
I mentioned earlier, I'm sort of always thinking about other things and sort of like I like next steps. But it is so incredibly powerful and sometimes emotional for me to sit. It usually happens when no one's here. I will sit and I'll look around, and I actually had this feeling this year more than ever that I was like, wow, I actually have a real farm. And it's big enough now to be considered that, you know? And there's stuff going on here. There's things that require attention every day. And yeah, it's overwhelming at times for sure. It's when there's always stuff to do, but it makes me so proud that we've gotten to this point and we have a platform from which to build for the future and do more.
Well, Pete, thank you very much for joining the podcast and for everything you do for the Seacoast. We have one final question, and we ask this same final question at the end of every episode every week, and it is brought to you by David Higgins, our show's trusted advisor for financial services and planning. As he grows his local business, he's also supporting our show, so we thank him for that. Please reach out to David by visiting the info in the show notes. Pete, if you were to leave this earth tomorrow, what would you want people to remember about you?
I would hope people would remember that I care about other people. And I am to think about this one a little bit more. What this business is about, and this more than a business, this place is about, is providing an opportunity for people to come together. I'm a social creature. I love socializing. I love being around people. It makes me happy. And I know not everyone is the same way, but this space here, we have such an opportunity to provide people a place to come together and enrich their lives, even in a small way. It doesn't have to be a big way. And what I want people to remember about me is that I care about that. That's what I care about.
Thanks so much for joining, Pete.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate everything that you do.
That's Pete Endres, the owner of Bird Dog Cider in Greenland, New Hampshire. To learn more about their upcoming events, including the Bend and Brews on October 4th, which I will be at, just visit birddogcider.com. To support this show, you can come out to Seacoast Stories Dinner Club in Kittery on Wednesday, or you can just tell a friend about the show, which truly helps us in our mission of bringing the Seacoast closer together, one podcast at a time. Now, before we actually go, you know I love a good story, and Pete has one more story to tell about a murder that took place on his property just a couple years back. Here's Pete again.
There's actually a lot of stories here, and we try very much to root our ciders and the names of our ciders into maybe some sort of like history of this property. And there's one story in particular that I'll tell, and that is the story of Deacon John. Deacon John Weeks lived in our house, in our farmhouse. He is a member of the Weeks family, which is deep in Greenland history. They're one of the big families in Greenland.
Who knew there were big families in Greenland?
Yep, the Weeks family. They run deep. And Deacon John Weeks, he was born in 1757. He died in 1821. He suffered an ill fate at the hands of his farmhand. He was actually murdered.
Really?
Yep, in our house in 1821. And we uncovered this, my mother-in-law, when we were under contract with the property in 2019 and doing diligence on it. My mother-in-law found this, New Hampshire homicide, like whatever piece of history. And she found it. She found the fact that he was murdered. Just kind of crazy to me. But we took it for what it is, and it was an unfortunate fate for him.
I'd say so.
Yeah, it sucks. He was chased into the house by the farmhand, and upstairs into the house, he was shot through a door, and he died the next morning.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's buried out back in the Weeks cemetery plot in the back of our property. Big, beautiful tombstone. It ties in with our cider.
Wait. Did you know this murder had happened before you acquired?
Yeah,
or
before we closed.
Okay, so this did not deter you in any way.
It did not. No, it did not. It did sort of tie into some of our spiritual feelings towards the house and of the house, though. And so
if you ever invite me over for dinner, not coming. Just saying.
No, there's only good energy around here. I promise you that. I had it when we actually tore the house apart and doing the renovation. I went and had a chat with it. I'm like, hey, we're not, this isn't any bad feelings or ill will or anything. We're just trying to restore your legacy. And
chat with the spirit,
the house.
Okay.
I chatted with the house and anyone who was listening.
All right.
There was a chair in the attic of the house. The previous owners were furniture dealers, and they had this beautiful Victorian chair sitting in the attic. It was covered in dust, and it had been there for decades. And the odd thing that I noticed about the chair is it didn't have a shred of damage on it. No mouse chewing, no nothing. It was in perfect condition other than the dust. And so at one point, I had a chat with the chair, and I said, hey, if you are maybe Deacon John's chair or something, I'm just going to bring you out to the barn because that's where the party is. So I don't want to upset moving you or anything, but come on out to the barn. So I brought the chair out to the barn, and we ended up making a cider that we called Deacon John. And it is in honor of basically the way that settlers or colonialists at that time would make cider, which is pretty simply. You would take juice, you would probably put it in a barrel because that's what you had access to at the time. And you would let it ferment and probably sit for a couple months or something. And then you'd start drinking it. So we have a barrel-aged cider that is called Deacon John. And on the back of the label is the pincushion. That's a pincushion photo of the chair that I happen to be sitting in right now.
Right. There you go. There's the reveal. Mm-hmm. You're sitting in Deacon John's chair.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
So people will have to come and check it out for themselves.